so happy we alive.
Good evening, and welcome to Louisville Late Night. This evening, we're at the beautiful Comedy Caravan Comedy Club in the Highlands, and we're very privileged to have with us this evening the owner and operator of Comedy Caravan. I'm going to show you a few little murals as we're talking here. We have with us the owner and operator of Comedy Caravan, Mr. Tom Sobel. And Tom is a native Louisvillian who grew up somewhere out on the, what is it, southeast side? Where's Wagner? It's
East.
East, okay. East. And Tom has made a tremendous impact on the entertainment and culture of Louisville, both locally and nationally. And I personally can't say just how important I think that comedy is in our lives here in Louisville, as the world has become increasingly uptight and difficult and stressful. Sometimes, somehow, there's nothing like great comedy to pull one through. And I know that many people say that laughter is the best medicine, and that has certainly been my impression. But over and above comedy in that general therapeutic sense, another thing is that the Comedy Caravan is a tremendous resource here in Louisville. We have, when you think of Louisville, you think of many things. You think of Churchill Downs, you think of the Louisville Actors Theater, the University of Louisville, Spalding University, Bellarmine University, Sullivan University, the University of Louisville Medical School. You think about the Louisville Symphony, the Louisville Ballet, the Louisville Orchestra, the Louisville Bats. There's a lot of great things going on here in Louisville, but I personally think at the very heart of everything that's going on, there's nothing that can equal the power and the importance of comedy. And quite frankly, when I asked to interview Tom Sobel, who's been a catalyst not just locally but nationally in the comedy field, I had no idea. I was clueless that Louisville was actually a mecca of comedy. And some have described Tom Sobel and his co-workers as an incubator for future comic talent. So Tom has been described by his colleagues as an extraordinarily honest and forthright guy whose word can be counted on. He's obviously a hard worker, and I believe he was described as an enterprising young man, wasn't he, by your was it your wife?
Actually, the woman that introduced my wife and I on a blind date many years ago, living on Cherokee Road.
Oh yeah.
And the woman setting up the blind date was asked by my future wife how to describe me, and her roommate said Tom is a very enterprising young man.
Well, that's certainly.
Sure, I was a janitor in those days, so I was very enterprising. Far more enterprising today.
So you learned humility right from the beginning.
No, I learned how to make fun of myself right from the beginning. That's the whole idea. Well, it's been a wild ride for the last almost 25 years of stand-up comedy, and we've seen the rise and the fall of performers from people like Roseanne and Sinbad, who started with us as amateurs 20 years ago, to the fabulous people that are coming up today. There's a young fellow that we met in Memphis 4 years ago. He's about to turn, next week he'll turn 19 years old, and he's now in New York City where he's on a full ride scholarship to NYU Film School, and he's going to make a very heavy impact into the comedy industry. The Montreal Comedy Festival people, as recently as last week, looked at him and thought, boy, here is a budding star of the future, Dominic Dierkes.
Really? I remember it wasn't that, doesn't seem like that many years ago, my neighbor, next door neighbor, Jen, told me she worked at the comedy club, and I told her, well, if anybody ever that's really hot ever comes along, you know, be sure to tell me. And she said, of course, well, everybody that's at the comedy club is hot. And but about a month later, she said, well, we have this guy coming that's really good. And so I bought tickets for myself and a friend that's a surgeon. And anyway, we went to the show, and it was Jay Leno. And I'd never heard of Jay Leno. And,
well, Jay actually started here in Louisville. You know, the first full-time comedy club in Louisville was Shirley's Comedy Club in Mall St. Matthews, which opened in August of 1982. And the first show there was, Jay Leno was the headliner, and Emo Phillips was the feature act, and Phil Kelly was the host and master of ceremonies. And Phil's a very fine entertainer, but the Courier-Journal, reviewing that first comedy show opening here in Louisville, had done it in the most interesting manner. They had a one-column headline that said, Shirley's, a comedy club opens. And the first line of that article read, local comedian Phil Kelly. And it went for 7 inches on the front page of the feature section when the last word on that front page of the feature section was J, and the first word on page 7 was Leno. They had split his name 7 column inches into the article. I think that's called burying the lead. Jay's a very talented fella, and he remains, Jay Leno never forgets anyone he's ever met. I can still call Jay today at the Tonight Show and get a hold of him if I need to. Actually, I once had, when my daughter was in junior high school, I once had a babysitter that, or she was in grade school, and I had a Ballard High School girl babysitting at my home, and my wife and I were out for the evening, and we came home and asked if there were any calls, and this 16-year-old Ballard High School girl looks at me and she goes, well, I got this call and the guy says, asked if you were here, and I said, no, that you were out for the evening. And he said, well, could I leave a message? And I said, sure, could I have your name? She said, well, just tell Tom to call Jay. And she said, Jay, will he know your phone number? I think he said, yeah, just tell him to call Jay Leno. It's okay, he's got my number. And how could this little girl go to Ballard High School the following day, or the following Monday, and be able to say, hubba, 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 you're not going to believe who I spoke with on the phone. It's pretty interesting. There are calls that come from anybody and everybody, and have been that way for...
Yeah, I noticed the phone was ringing on the hook upstairs in your office. I was glad to be able to procure you away from your office there. One thing, I know that you've had an incredible career, and the amount of hard work and competition in the entertainment business is, well talked about. But would you mind sharing with us, if just a few stories from your past in comedy? I believe you began, and actually, let's go back a little further. You was it Wagner High School you went to?
I was at Wagner High School when the Juggernaut Jug Band was first formed in 1965, and we graduated from high school together in '68. And went off to college, and I ended up in the entertainment business working with student activities programming for college campuses. And the Juggernaut Jug Band was one of my clients, along with a string of avant-garde performers and jazz players and all kinds of strange things. But comedy caught my eye, and with the problems that we ran into with the gas crunches of the 70s, keeping a touring act on the road became very impractical. You got to the point where you couldn't reliably get gasoline to keep vans going. I can remember we used to have to make sure the vans had different license plates, one with an odd number and one with an even number, so that if we needed to get from point A to point A, we could always at least get gas into one of them and then siphon it if we needed to stay on the road. And it got to the point where touring